Hey again, everyone. Fall in for another episode of Tactical Plastic Report, where I talk about my game, Army Men, a game of tactical plastic. This week, I wanted to continue our tour through the Plastos Federation and discuss the next nation on our list, which I've been both reviewing and looking forward to for a bit, because the reason I started with United Polymeria is that happened to be the setting for the first official mission that I wrote for the game outside of the core book. So, I'm hoping, for folks who are interested in the game and are looking to pick up some supplemental material, I'm hoping to get one mission per nation out by the time this little run of products is done, and then I'm going to cap it off with a mission for the Federation as a whole. So then no matter what military you want to be part of, what country you want to be from, we can all come together and participate in that last one, and then I'm going to look around and see where it is we are as a product, as a game, and I'm going to see what it is you all want to hear from as the audience. So I figure I'll move to the next nation that I'm planning on setting a mission in, and for that we move across the unsalted sea to the Styric Republic. Now, the Styric Republic is one of those nations that is both very old, but is also very new. And if that sounds like a contradiction, well, come with me on this journey and I'll explain what it is I mean. Now, the current version of the Styric Republic is not what it has always been. The original ruler of this nation was the Styrene Magnate, and the Magnate was, well, aggressive, as many such imperial-style rulers were. They often waged wars against their neighbors, they attempted to claim as much territory as possible, they expanded their military, their armed forces, and they tried to claim as many territories, resources, citizens, etc. as possible. And sometimes they would, in fact, form peace agreements, peace accords, with various allies. And sometimes those would last for a while, sometimes they would break them whenever it was convenient or when a new ruler came to power. However, one of the strongest bonds that they formed was with the royalty of United Polymeria, and the Magnate and the royal family actually intermarried in order to seal these agreements. So the two of them, as major controlling powers of the North, were a force to be reckoned with while they existed. And while this bolstered United Polymeria's strength in the face of all other comers, it also unfortunately led to a lot of backing for some of the magnates', well, less agreeable wars and policies over the centuries. Now, this is when we get into recent history, because roughly 100 years and some change ago, there was discontent amongst the people of the Republic. They felt that their needs were not being listened to, they were not actually being helped by their government, and more importantly, the Magnate had, well, fallen into reflecting on how important they were. The public works that they funded were all about their glory. The wars they fought were not about resources or protection or defense, they were about making themselves feel bigger and more important, as their influence may have waned slightly. This often led to citizens being conscripted, it led to lots of new taxes being levied, and it led to people going hungry. And as we all know from studying history, hunger is one of the first indications that those in charge may soon be facing, well, all sorts of unfortunate pushback. Which is precisely what happened with the aid of a couple of whispers and more than a little bit of military backing from the Silicate autocracy, who was planting agents, saboteurs, resistance fighters who wanted to start, if not a coup, they wanted to start a rebellion going. They wanted to give the Magnate problems at home to deal with, so they were no longer looking abroad and asking who it was they were going to take things from next. This succeeded wildly better than they ever could have dreamed, which led to the People's Rebellion. Roughly 100 years ago, the forces of the Magnate were overthrown, they were thrown out of the country, and many of them were publicly executed as a way to make way for the new government that was coming into power. And the Styric Republic, well, it kept the name, but it became more of a genuine republic. They wanted to become a people's republic. They wanted to make sure that the citizens were taken care of. They wanted to ensure that everyone did things out of patriotism, out of duty to their neighbors, out of duty to their community, and lots of very similar high ideals. They essentially wanted, well, to do the opposite of what their ruling family had been doing. And this led to, well, some very noble endeavors. It led to a lot of civic pride. It led to a lot of patriotism actually coming back to the people that many of them had not felt for generations or more. It also led to the creation of a new religion called the Orthodoxy of Heroes, where they took average people who sacrificed for their neighbors, who fought for the protection of those nearest and dearest to them, and while not raising them up on pedestals, did make it very clear that socially, these are the things that they should aspire to. They should not aspire to being wealthy. They should not aspire to political power. They should aspire to service. They should attempt to do things for others in a way that makes their lives better and that helps everyone in the nation. But as with many political factions, running a country is significantly harder than overthrowing a government. So there has been, shall we say, a touch of corruption that has gone through this particular nation over the years. There has been an expansion of the military. There has been an expansion of civic focus, we'll say, on military service. Of all individuals, once they reach a certain age, must do mandatory military time. The police force is an expansion, an arm of the military. Citizens, while having many more rights than they used to, while having lots of abilities, lots of things that were denied them under the Magnate, may not be as free as their government tells them they are. And this is where we come up with a very interesting conundrum, because while this country is very new in many respects, part of the way that the new government has maintained their authority, that they have kept the citizenry on board, is that they lean very heavily into old traditions to make it seem like this is who they've always been. This is what they were beneath the skin, beneath the surface, outside of the ruling family. They have lots of pomp and circumstance. There's lots of polish on their boots and their buttons. And there's lots of, well, public engagement, public works. There's lots of distractions offered for the average people to make sure that they don't question how much it is they're being asked to sacrifice and on behalf of whom. And in this way, the government has managed to stay one step ahead of the public discontent that created it in the first place. Now, for folks who are noticing a lot of real-world parallels again, just as United Polymeria was inspired by the history of the British Empire and lots of the mythology that came out of the United Kingdom, so too the Styric Republic is sort of holding up a mirror to Soviet Russia and the USSR. There are a lot of parallels. There's a lot of things you can draw on, particularly when you consider that the forces of the Styric Republic are, well, they're viewed as durable. They're viewed as enduring. There are so many harsh conditions that they have to train under. There are so many awful things that both their troopers and their equipment have to deal with, that while their weaponry might be seen as ungainly or ugly or even primitive by some conditions, it is reliable and it will get the job done. More importantly, the soldiers of their military pride themselves on their durability. They pride themselves on their stoicism, being able to hold a position no matter what the cost, no matter what it is that's coming at them. They will not move unto the last man, because that is how heroes are made. And this plays into the orthodoxy of heroes, of occasionally you will have troopers who, having grown up on the stories of great national heroes, will attempt to go out and either duplicate or surpass the feats of those they grew up hearing about. And so you end up with almost a war boy mentality, where things that other nations, other armies might find untenable, they are eagerly sought by some of these troops because they have been taught that this is the way you truly become a hero. This is the way you serve the nation, serve your neighbors, serve your people. and thus the machine that's created is one part physical, made up of people and equipment and arms, and one part social, psychological. It is engineering the spirits of the people to come together, to sacrifice together, to fight together against common foes. And this makes them a very interesting, well, nation amongst all of the others, because while every nation in the Plastos Federation has their history, has had their problems, has their conflicts and issues, there is rarely something that is as difficult to cope with as the sprawling bureaucracy of the Styric Republic, but which at the same time, the people may complain about, the people in the nation may talk about how terrible it is and how frustrated they are with everything. But as soon as someone mentions that, well, maybe it's time we do what we did before, that's when they all come together, because no one outside of their nation gets to tell them how they do anything. Which, when you consider how it is they led the revolution in the first place, is more than a little bit ironic. Now, while the Styric Republic has had some contentious relationships with other nations, particularly the downfall of the Silicate autocracy, but we will talk about that in a future video when we discuss what happened to them and what became of their nation. But they have a bit of a double-edged relationship with lots of other countries, because on the one hand, they are also affected by the Vespoid threat. They are partially insulated by the very cold climes that they occasionally have during the winters, but the rest of the year, they are just as vulnerable as everyone else, and they recognize that, at least for this time, it is important to have allies they can call on, because they are not always as reliable as they would like when it comes to their nation, particularly when you consider the corruption is not just on a government level. They also have a great deal of homegrown terrorists. They have syndicates and criminal organizations that can occasionally flourish within their own borders, because as long as what they are doing is not reported, not acted on by current governors, it will just continue, and that leads to lots of grift and lots of profit. So often the resources they project themselves as having simply aren't there, and that can be a problem, particularly when it comes to state armories, which may not be quite as full as they tell people they are. So, even though the Styric Republic puts out the air that they are the ones helping everyone else, they are the ones standing strong for the Federation, because that plays into their national identity, it plays into the social consciousness that they all have, they also make sure they have that undercurrent, that others need them, they don't need others in this conflict. But that may not necessarily be true. And if a trooper starts climbing the ranks and starts actually seeing what's going on behind the scenes, they might figure that out. And if they have not been properly propagandized by the time they reach those ranks, they might start trouble when it comes to letting the truth out. But that is a brief rundown of the Styric Republic, who they are, what they were based on, how they got to be where they are today as far as the setting goes, and hopefully they are going to end up being the setting for the next mission that I put out for this game for anyone who is eager to get their troopers in the field and start getting fingers on triggers. But which of the remaining missions would you like to see if you are already an Army Men fan? And if you are not, what would you like to see in addition to these little history lessons? Would you like to see more about the cultures of the various countries? Would you like to see about the different colors of the Army Men that exist and why they are the way they are? Would you like to get some brief rundowns on weapons or strategies or anything like that? I am here to give you what it is you want, so make sure you put your desires down in the comments below, and I will get to all of them as quickly as I can. Until next time, this has been Tactical Plastic Report. Fall out and have a good day gaming.